Hi, this is Gila. So, I hope you enjoyed your Christmas if you celebrate it, and certainly the opportunity to spend some quality time with friends and family. So, I've been reflecting on how the world has never been perfect, certainly since the Garden of Eden. From the murder of Abel by Cain through countless wars and horrors, incredible loss and bloodshed, personal pains and tragedies, life has never been easy for anyone. And it saddens me greatly to see that Western civilization appears to be showing signs of moving towards its demise, just as every other civilization has done. Rome ultimately fell because hired mercenaries were needed to patrol its borders, and they demanded more and more money and land, and ultimately the whole society was destabilized. Rome was sacked, and although the eastern part of the empire continued on in a depleted form for another 1,000 years, it was never the same again. Morals declined, not only sexually, but apparently people wanted more and more blood and gore in their entertainments, watching other human beings being hacked or tortured to death in amphitheatres. Only when the money ran out for these death feasts did they finally end. In Western Europe, we've seen a decline in birth rates among its native population and a decline in moral standards. There does seem to be a decline in rational discourse as well, not only amongst the media, but also in government institutions. Now, of course, it's vital to ensure that individual freedom is preserved and that you can decide for yourself how to live your life. We seem to have gone beyond that, so that essentially you should have no right to criticize me if I violate what were moral norms only a generation ago. That's going beyond freedom to another form of tyranny. Now in Britain, we've had national insurance contributions, which were supposed to provide for the pensions of retirees, but these have been used for decades as additional taxes. And people in general live longer now, but who's going to pay for our retirement? Bringing in millions of immigrants may have seemed the best solution. And then promoting the now failed attempt at multiculturalism, that you must surely be a racist or a bigot if you don't believe in the eradication of national borders and a free-for-all entry into our countries, may all have been very well meant, but failed to take into account the reality of human nature, the effects of the wholesale importation of millions of human beings with different cultural norms and belief systems, without bothering to check what one ideology in particular truly promotes. As a result, the freedoms that so many people suffered and died for us to enjoy today are well under attack. A persecution over a number of years by the authorities of Tommy Robinson, who is actually a very brave British man who cares deeply about human rights, especially those of many children who've been systematically abused and raped by gangs of mostly Muslim men, and he's been falsely labelled and libelled as a supposed far-right extremist and racist bigot when he's not. It's deeply shameful. Then the appalling decision only last November in the European Court of Human Rights that speaking the truth, according to entirely Islamic sources, about the character and actions of the Islamic prophet is some kind of crime is yet another nail in the coffin for human rights. Now, abuse doesn't only destroy people's lives, and these were children, and our children in British towns and cities who'd not even had a chance yet. But part of it is the perpetrators try to convince their prey of their own guilt, fear and horror, and to believe their lies rather than the reality. If Islam were truly a religion of peace with no coercion, there'd be no problem. How many Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Jews, Christians, atheists nowadays go around preaching hatred and violence towards non-adherents or ex-adherents and blow themselves up along with many other people in a fanatical attempt to enter a supposed paradise of rivers of wine and large numbers of beautiful young virgins to surface their every need. Actually, I've often wondered what women get. I mean, where are all the 72 young men to service women who blow themselves up and go to paradise? So, anyway, never mind about that. Okay. As Bridget Gabriel, a survivor of civil war from Lebanon, which broke out once Muslims became the majority in her country, has warned, most people in communist Russia weren't actually communists. Most people in Nazi Germany weren't actually Nazis. And while most Muslims may be good and peaceful people, I've been privileged to know some myself. The peaceful majority were and are irrelevant. It's the ideology. In this upside-down Alice in Wonderland moral universe where hatred and bigotry is usually blamed on those people with the courage to stand up and to name the source for what it truly is, where the world appears to be very different ethically from what it was even when I was a child personally in the 60s and 70s, what can we do? In my own small way, certainly personally, after Tommy Robinson was arrested and illegally sent to prison last May, I started speaking out here on YouTube about the evils of those particular violent commandments in Islamic ideology, such as Quran 8:12, 9:5 and 9:29, which promote hatred and bigotry against non-adherents. Not for any bad reason, heaven forbid, not because I'm somehow bigoted or racist or, wonderful word, this Islamophobic, when I try to do, well, I hope I try to do, what I do solely for good purposes. Because I care. Because I want a better world where freedom prevails for everyone, whatever the colour of their skin or their belief system. Where ultimately everyone has the chance to enjoy the tremendous and amazing gift of life to the full that we have on this incredible planet. It is that freedom which gives us the opportunity to explore and to seek truth for ourselves. What ultimately matters, and I am a religious person myself, is surely not our belief system. And I do have to ask, would a loving creator really condemn good people to everlasting torment because they cannot bring themselves to believe that, well, he had a son who died on the cross, or because they cannot bring themselves to believe that an Arabian warlord living in the 7th century, who essentially deceived, stole, raped and murdered his way through Arabia in the latter part of his life, could truly have been a prophet of God? Isn't the message to do good to other people, to stand up against evil and to do your best to leave the world a better place than the one you found it, not forgetting to love yourself while you're at it, ultimately more important than the messenger? Personally, I've no doubt that morality, which is effectively and simply respecting and being sensitive to the equal needs and rights of others, as well as ourselves, is there ultimately for our true freedom. Just as you need rules for driving a lethal machine on the road, we need some kind of framework for our lives, because we're not the only people on this planet. We're not alone. There are billions of us human beings, and what we do affects other people, and what they do affects us. As John Donne said some 400 years ago or so, no man is an island. No woman either. Now, frankly, I don't know whether or not Britain and Western Europe as a whole will ultimately survive as free countries, or whether they will go through the horrendous torment and bloodshed of civil war in the future, potentially ending up as oppressive Islamified gulags. None of us knows the future, and I certainly hope not. But as Pastor Niemöller famously said about the situation and the growth of evil in Nazi Germany, firstly, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. It happened there in an advanced, modern, and highly intellectual society in the 1930s. It can happen anywhere, and yes, it can happen in Britain too. And as Edmund Burke famously said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men or women to do nothing. It's so true. Now, it may be hard to stand up for the truth. There may be a personal cost to stand up for what is right. But it will be a lot harder tomorrow if enough of us do not stand up and speak truth peacefully, without hatred, but firmly today. And there is always hope. We have a choice. What kind of society do we want our children and our grandchildren to live in? If it's a good one, we need to stand up and speak the truth. So I wish anyone watching this a good, happy, and more hopeful new year. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.